Welcome. This session, as you see, is leveraging games in the fight to protect local cultures. My name is Kate Edwards. I'm the executive director of the Global Game Jam organization, and I've been around the industry for many, many years as a geographer doing culturalization work. So this topic not only dovetails very closely to my heart with Global Game Jam, but also with my work in the industry all these years. So as we get started, though, I'd like the illustrious panel, who's the real focal point here, to introduce themselves. This project was basically a combination, as you will hear, of the U.S. State Department, or Department of State, however you want to say it, and the Global Game Jam, and of course the team who's here representing the winning team for this project. So, and we'll get into, of course, the details about what this was all about and what the whole vision for this was. But first, let's have some introductions. So if you want to start with Catherine.
Sure. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Catherine Foster. I'm the program director for the Cultural Antiquities Task Force. I'm also the executive director of the Cultural Heritage Coordinating Committee at the U.S. Department of State in Washington.
Thanks, Catherine. And I'm Paul Fisher. I'm a senior program officer, also with the Cultural Antiquities Task Force. Mostly I back up Catherine.
And then Victor?
Yep. I'm Victor Bankler. I'm CEO of a small indie studio named Another Team from Sweden, together with Vanya here. And I'm also a lecturer at the University of Skövde, where I teach game design and game development.
I'm Vania Castagnino. I work together with the Student Game Arena as event coordinator, and I'm the creative director of Another Team, so I work with Victor.
I am Mateo Alaiza. I'm from Peru. I'm a lecturer in the University of Lima. I am also CEO with my brother in Hermanos Magia, a game development studio, and I also work as a game director in Leap Game Studios.
Hi, thanks for coming. My name is Joaquin Concha. I'm a game developer for Carpacha, a little studio in Lima.
Great, well, thank you. So just in case people don't know what the Global Game Jam is, I feel obligated to let you know. So the Global Game Jam is the world's largest game creation event that happens every January or thereabouts, usually at the end of January. It's been around since 2008, so there's been 14 editions, including during COVID, where we had to make it a virtual edition. But our mission statement is to empower individuals worldwide to learn, experiment, and create together through the medium of games. That's really what it's all about. The Global Game Jam is not a competition. It is an educational and collaborative exercise. And we're really proud of the fact that we can point to many people in this industry who will, basically tell us that the Global Game Jam is where they started their path on their career in the game industry. And so our whole mission really then is to emphasize the cultures of the jammers all around the world. I mean, just to give you a sense of the scale, right before the pandemic, which was our largest event in 2020, we had just about 49,000 people in 118 countries at 935 live sites produce about 9,600 games in one weekend. A lot of games. And of course, it's all around a single theme because we launch with a single theme. Like this year's theme for the Jam was duality. Last year's theme was lost and found. And so we always create a theme that is sufficiently generic so that it can be, it can work both culturally and linguistically around the world. And it's just utterly fascinating to see the interpretations of all this, from across all these different cultures and jammers, and to see what, see what they come up with these themes. So, one of the things that we do in the Global Game Jam, other than the huge event that we do in January, we also have a smaller event in the summer called GGJ Next, which is for younger people, usually 12 to 18-year-olds, because we obviously want to get the next generation coming up into the game industry, into game development. But we also do partner jams, which is really where the Cultural Heritage Jam comes in. So throughout the rest of the year, other than January or in the summer, we try and come up with events that are going to be interesting for our community, that'll engage them on different topics. Sometimes it's focused on a certain technology a company might want to try out, but then sometimes it might be a certain theme, which is really how, our partnership with the U.S. Department of State started around this particular jam that we came up with. So, so we want to talk then about how this came about, the Cultural Heritage Game Jam Initiative, which was this partnership that started between us and the U.S. Department of State. So, if you want to describe.
Yeah, sure. I mean, maybe I'll start a little bit with background on our office, the Cultural Heritage Center in the Department of State, which has a really unique mission that we conduct on behalf of the American people, and which really benefits people around the world. And we work with international partners, cultural heritage professionals, and engaged communities worldwide to protect and preserve cultural heritage in all its diversity. We foster connections between cultural heritage professionals and institutions and their international counterparts. We support preservation efforts to protect heritage from the impact of deterioration, natural disasters, and other causes by supporting preservation projects around the world. And we protect heritage from theft, looting, trafficking, and destruction through constant collaboration with partner governments and law enforcement officials. And while our efforts are focused on the unique characteristics of the culturally significant monuments and sites, as well as intangible heritage practices, this work really depends on partnerships and adopting technologies that can enhance our efforts. And in that vein, I really can't think of a better avenue to explore than game developers and this conference. So every year, GDC brings the international game development community together to exchange ideas, to solve problems, and really shape the future of the industry. And that's exactly what we were hoping to achieve through this first ever Cultural Heritage Game Jam competition that happened in November of last year. And this innovative kind of global initiative invited individuals and teams of gamers to exchange ideas, to ask tough questions, and to develop prototype games to really raise awareness of cultural heritage protection among new audiences, at least new to us. So by expanding this circle of awareness, those of us who work to preserve cultural heritage, and whether that's governments or civil society or engaged individuals, we really gain new allies in the shared responsibility of helping communities kind of safeguard these artifacts, these monuments, and practices of their past. And I'm really proud to say that the Cultural Heritage Game Jam exceeded our expectations, greatly. So, we attracted over 850 participants from more than 70 countries around the world. And we're very excited about the potential of the 116 games that were created for this jam, the potential that they have to reach new audiences and people, to spark new ideas around cultural heritage preservation, and really to inspire action in the real world to protect and preserve cultural heritage. So it's a little bit of background about our work and the jam itself. I want to turn it over now to my colleague Paul Fisher to add a bit more kind of context to the work that we do on the Cultural Antiquities Task Force.
Thanks, Catherine, and thank you to all of you for showing up here today. I want to tell you a story. We're all gathered here at GDC because we're all storytellers. We're the collection of stories that we tell about ourselves, the myths, the epics, that we tell about ourselves as individuals, as organizations, as nations, and as one planet. Protecting these stories as they're represented in tangible cultural heritage of peoples around the world, so that future generations can study, learn from, and be inspired by that cultural heritage, is the work of Catherine and I's team, the Cultural Antiquities Task Force. The task force and our 6 federal agencies, including the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice, work to disrupt illicit trafficking of cultural heritage by promoting close law enforcement coordination, training, and building the capacity of foreign law enforcement and heritage managers to protect and preserve sites, objects, and the stories they tell. So we collaborate with partners on public education and outreach as crime prevention. This is where the Game Jam and all of our storytellers come in. The task force wanted to use the medium of games for a couple of reasons. To raise awareness about the threats to cultural heritage from looting, theft, trafficking, and destruction. To build understanding about the importance of cultural heritage within communities. To foster cross-disciplinary collaboration and dialogue around cultural heritage protection, and to develop new and innovative tools and solutions to protect cultural heritage from various risks, including climate change. So the games developed for the Jam have not only inspired us, but countless others around the world who now have a newfound appreciation for cultural heritage, for the threats it faces from looting and trafficking, and the positive role that games can play in telling the stories of our past for the future. So now let me tell you one particular story about the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet, which I hope will illuminate what it is that we do, because playing 116 video games is not our normal fare. So the story of Gilgamesh, a demigod, and his dreams of adventure were inscribed into a clay tablet more than 3,500 years ago. The tablet is originally from Iraq and was exported from that country without permission. In 2003, an antiquities dealer in the United States bought it and then created a fake ownership history for the tablet before selling it on. The tablet changed hands many times before ultimately ending up in a museum, not the Smithsonian, not far from where Catherine and I work in Washington, D.C. So this is where the Cultural Antiquities Task Force comes in. Since 2004, the Cultural Antiquities Task Force has coordinated with federal law enforcement agencies, foreign partners, and Interpol to disrupt the theft, looting, vandalism, and trafficking of cultural heritage. Organized crime syndicates, including terrorists, steal, loot, and illegally export objects like the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet and sell these national treasures to dealers and collectors around the world. Through pillage, objects are hastily and unscientifically removed from their archaeological contexts, sometimes destroying whole sites in the process and thus depriving us of vital information for understanding past societies, which then goes on to inspire all of our gamers. Often, the trafficked objects find their way into private collections, never to be seen again. In the case of the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet, I have good news. In 2019, it was seized by US law enforcement, and last year, it finally made its long journey home and returned to the people of Iraq. So that's the Cultural Antiquities Task Force. I'm going to hand it back over to Kate, who will tell us hopefully about our judging process.
Yes. So, well, I do have one question, though. I don't know if you remember, but when we started this partnership, and I remember in our first conversation, and they approached, the Global Game Jam, like, let's do this. And I said, do you really want to partner with the industry that created Tomb Raider and has Indiana Jones and things like that? And so I'm just curious, really quick, like, what drew you to games specifically as like a medium to like really, help with this issue?
Yeah, I mean, games, of course, are a very unique and powerful medium. And, first and foremost, we really wanted to democratize our problem solving. We can do all the strategizing in the world internally with the task force, but when you open that up and you allow other engaged partners to come in, and especially in the game dev community, you can come up with problem solving that, solutions that we couldn't even dream of, but that all of you, have this unique perspective to offer. Games also, of course, like bolster innovation. You think of all the user-driven experiences and interfaces, of course, AI, VR, AR. all of those technologies could be leveraged in our efforts to protect and preserve heritage. As Paul's already kind of alluded to, the storytelling aspect of games that all of you are aware of. You know, we can really convey these narratives and complex ideas in ways that are not kind of preachy, they're experiential, for the players, you know, to kind of actually play through scenarios, play through histories and the lives of other people that they couldn't have kind of imagined or experienced in any other way short of, you know, actually going and visiting these places and living with people. And it's through that real immersive experience that you can begin to kind of build mutual understanding, build that empathy for people. And in the terms of trafficking, I mean, so many lives are affected on the ground. If you think of, you know, cultural objects that are important to your ethnic or religious community, if something is taken away from your church, from your mosque, for example, synagogue, that doesn't allow you to participate in your religion anymore because those objects are gone. You can imagine how detrimental that is to your being, you know, your day-to-day and what your community identifies itself with. And so being able to tell that story and feel that emotion, that loss that communities have when their cultural objects are kind of stolen away from them is something I think, you know, that games are uniquely suited to build on. And then, of course, just meeting people where they are. You know, you all know the statistics, how many gamers there are out there. Like, that is where people are spending their time. And so, you know, we want to meet people where they are in a medium that they're comfortable with. And so games, more than movies even, or any other medium, like kind of rise to the top for us in terms of a space that we could really engage. And the game dev community seems to be really game, so pun intended, for collaborating. And so, yeah, that's why we were looking to games.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure people might be curious about like what came out of the game jam. So I'm going to show you a little highlight reel here. Yes. Yes, thank you. I mean, it's amazing work. I mean, really. And of course, that's just a small sample of the 116 games that we received. It's just the diversity of not only the gameplay, the game types, the cultures being represented, and the geographic diversity was just phenomenal. And I think it really surpassed all of our expectations. And to just talk a little bit about the judging process, of course, once we had these 116 games, the group of us between the U.S. Department of State and the Global Game Jam, we basically had to get together and judge the games very quickly. We had a very small window to make this happen, but we had our criteria that we set up, played all the games. We went through every single one of the games and had a great time doing it. And then we did there were some prizes attached to the games. So you can see here we had like, I can't read that, but best audio, the accessible design, best use of educational design principles, the best art, and best engaging design, or most engaging design. So we had a lot of games that just did a fantastic job. It was really difficult to pick like the overall winner, but we did eventually decide upon the overall winner, which was the game Purunmachu, which, yes. So one of the great pleasures that we had as the people organizing this event was to bring the team here to GDC to talk about their work, because really they are the stars of this session and the amazing work that they did on their game. And so what we want to do then is turn it over to the team to talk about the process they went through and their engagement with this jam. And you tell me, I can show the video of the game if you want, or do you want to speak a little first?
We want to start
With the video, I think.
Let's
Okay. Well, you saw a brief snippet of it in the highlights reel, but we'll show you some gameplay here.
This video is cut, so it's show 3 different pieces from the game. This is quite early when you find one of the first artifacts in the rainforest close to the foot of the mountain. That's our protagonist right there. And we communicate through these bubbles that gives us insight into her thoughts that changes throughout the game as she encounters cultural heritage.
And I don't know if you noticed, but the prompt that appears every time you approach an object changes from take to steal. Like,
And that sort of reflects how her own attitude towards what she's doing. And this is the moment when she faces the Purunmachu, which is a mummy from the Chachapoya culture. And this is at the very end when she's climbing the mountain to reach the actual spot of the Purunmachu, where they are found. What's the name of the mountain?
Tiger Mountain.
Yeah.
It's where actually get the Chachapoya culture will bury their dead up in the mountain. Yeah, we went that side just for you to have the view.
Yeah. So.
So maybe I think I can start introducing a little bit of our team. We are actually 11 people. Yeah, us four. We actually have 3 more people in the audience, which is Pablo Carrillo, Beto Aznaran, and Gabriel Alaiza. I don't know if you want to, yeah. Yeah, and we have some people that couldn't make it here. In between those, Nahid, who was our fantastic programmer. She's from Iran and she couldn't actually have the visa to come here. And we actually come from like 3 actually different universities. 2 universities in Peru, Universidad de Lima and Universidad Católica, which is where Gabriel works. And they're actually funding for 6 months more of Purunmachu. They are very excited about where we can take this game to. And we have the University in Skövde, where Victor is a lecturer, and actually where I also studied in the Serious Game Master. And for example, we also have been working with some institutions. I think Mateo knows a little bit more about this.
Yeah, we have worked with many organizations from Peru that work in 2 different fields. One is the protection of the nature field. And it's really important because many of the references of the plants we use are not just, okay, I'm going to make a generic type of jungle, that many times we see that on video games, but we try to make a unique identity of jungle. Precisely the opposite to the reference of Indiana Jones.
Yeah, like Gabriel Alaiza has been working with the rangers from nature parks like Manu and Tambopata and Matses.
Yeah.
So he has like a lot of detail into what they look like.
Of botanical knowledge,
Yeah.
yeah. And the other organization we have talked with, and actually is the second part of the help we're receiving but also giving, is with a former director of the Chachapoyas region that is in the north of Peru in the jungle region. And she was a former Ministry of Culture, and now she runs this museum, and we're gonna donate the game for the whole region actually, and for the museum too. And well, she has helped us a lot with many things about information, because it's really hard to get it was really hard to get to certain things about a game touching a culture that it's not as well known as many others in Peru.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll show, you also included some slides that show some of the inspiration from between the actual cultural objects which you see on the right and then how it was represented in the game.
Okay. Oh yeah. So this just shows. You saw this in the video before. This is actually a textile used for wrapping the mummies in the, or it was used in the Chachapoya civilization, and that's one of the first sort of artifacts from the culture that you encounter. And here you shamelessly treat it like Indiana Jones would have. Just you grab it and put it in your backpack before you start questioning yourself.
Oh yeah, that's up in the mountain where actually the bodies are, well, buried.
Those are the actual Purunmachus. Actually, they are potteries. So there is a very interesting fact about why we chose this culture and not another one. Like any game that is fighting against the protection of any culture, it's important. So what's the criteria that you are going to use to choose which one? So one of the, we got two strong arguments that are very different. One is, in Peru, the most well-known culture is Inca culture. But and Chachapoya, it's a culture there's not much information about them, and not too many people know about this culture. And what is really important of this is that there's still people of that region that identifies with this culture, but there is not too much material that you can find about it. So, in a way, making games about ancient cultures, and it's not only about talking history and the past, but it's also a way of rethinking the future with new symbols, with new ways of seeing them, and new ways of having a way of relate to something that existed and has transformed with time.
Yeah, that's again a family of mummies at the side of the Tiger Mountain. All these contain mummies. They are, as Matteo said, they are pottery.
Yes, they are
huge.
potteries.
You can see the skulls on the top of their heads.
Yeah.
That's a human skull. So then you realize how big they are in comparison.
For us, what it was really interesting is that many times when you talk about a culture, it's really hard to make people get related to it. So, for example, at the beginning, we weren't going to do a Purunmachu project when we were just discussing what we were going to do. We wanted to do a Inca bridge. This is really interesting because this bridge is made every single year by farmers, and it's made with ropes. But we thought it was a really important subject, but at the same time, it was going to be really hard to people to relate to an object as a bridge. It's more abstract, especially if you're trying to make people connect to something that they are not related, even more if a culture that it's not well known. So for us, Purunmachus had this another special argument that is literally the Purunmachu is a person. And even so, for our Occidental influence, when we see maybe these drawings, we see a dead body and we think, oh, this is disgusting, this is horrible, no? But what is really interesting about the culture is that actually these people see them as their ancestors. So that's a great way of transforming a conception that normally it's not criticized or rethinked. And we thought this is a way of making a new relation to what really means to have ancestry and true cultural heritage to where you have come from or else. No, so we thought this was like a really strong point to make a connection between our main character and the relation that we wanted to work with him.
Yeah, it was very important for us that the game was like could show something that everyone can relate to, especially because in our own team we didn't have only Peruvians, we had like Swedish and Iranian, so it was very important that you could see what it was happening in the game and relate and yeah.
Yeah, we try to make the team one, so we chose the Purunmachu, like an idea we can develop, so everybody can understand what we want to make.
I'll just clarify what we're seeing in the picture there. So that's the mummy and our Gabriel's drawing of the mummy. And then you see the smashed Purunmachu. It's looters that had crushed the Purunmachu and stolen mummies because those are actually subject of looting.
Well, I'm curious in this process when you went through the research. Obviously, you mentioned like talking to some of the experts in the region, especially people representing that particular cultural group. I'm wondering, like, was there anything that you learned that was like you just had no idea, like very surprising to you?
Well, actually, yeah, of course. When you do research, things get more complex and complex. That's the beauty of it. So actually, what we knew at the beginning was that there was only one type of Purunmachu. Then when I did the research, there were like 7 types of Purunmachus, and actually there was the region was influenced by the Incas that were an immense empire, and well, there were Purunmachus Incas with mixed with Chachapoyas culture, also true Chachapoyas, Purunmachus. I learned a lot about the dangers of cultural theft because this is a very particular thing that happened. When I was talking with this archaeologist, she was very happy that we were doing this project, etc. But she was already frustrated when we were doing the project, and I couldn't understand why. And the thing is, like, she kept telling me stories about how everyone goes, takes pieces. No one respects like the space where the pieces are, and this is an immense danger because cultures like this really there are not too much information about, and any intervention of any person that is not a specialist creates enormous danger. No, so this is one of the little things I learned, but I learned much more. But I don't want to take the mic. Yeah.
Any other? Another thing too, I'm curious. This is kind of a question for everybody. So now the game's done. Well, I mean, it's been, at least the first version of it's done. Where do you want this to go from here? I guess I'm asking both the team, like, what do you hope to see with this particular game, and then also in general with this whole effort, like, where do you see it going from here?
Well, we have just a new version for the GDC now, so we are keep working in the game. Um, like Mateo said, we will donate this to the museum so people can understand in another way how this culture is. So that's where we are working. We probably have like 6 months at least for continue to work into this game.
And also, there are not too many examples of games like this in Latin America. This is really important because for us trying to find funding for the project, that it's also extremely hard in Latin America. We were lucky that I and my brother were, and Victor are professors, helps to build a new perspective of what games can do, and that's why we're really grateful to be here because this gives really a big horizon of how far a game that has this type of aim can go, no?
Yeah, I feel that the universities, especially in Peru, have been very excited about this project, like seeing this culture uplifted, and they're excited about seeing where it goes and what else can we teach with this type of tools. Yeah.
And I want to plus up what Mateo just said a little bit ago. For us, when we were thinking about our learning objectives, what Mateo just said, it brings this huge smile to my face, and it's like the monitoring and evaluation right there. That he said, he gained this appreciation for the nuance between different types of Purunmachu, and then also, learned about these different threats to cultural heritage from theft, looting, trafficking, and destruction. And so that work of fostering respect and telling those stories through games, like, I don't know, this is exactly what we were hoping for. And I'm just so overjoyed that, that's what came out in the game. Can I ask them a question? So, in the game, okay, so this is how I interpreted it, that the Purunmachu washed down from the mountains because of increased rainfall, because of climate change. Is that how you were, conceiving of the risks from climate change to cultural heritage in the game?
Yeah, right. We really wanted to touch on climate change as a part of this because not all cultural heritage destruction is man-made. Of course, no matter the cause, we have the power to protect it still. So we want to touch on that as well, and hopefully we can give a little bit more focus to it, so it doesn't have to be a question in the future, but it's clearly put some spotlight on the issue of climate change.
Well, great. Well, I think we've got about 10 minutes or so left, and I'm going to leave you with this link because the games are all up on the Cultural Heritage Game Jam site on itch.io. So I really encourage people, take a snapshot of that, go to the link, play the games. I mean, all 116 games are there, including Purunmachu. So we hope you go enjoy that. And in the meantime, while we're still here, if anyone has any questions for the panel here, I mean, please come up to the mic. I think there's a mic there, right? And yeah, feel free to ask some questions. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. This was a really good talk. I'm actually a local organizer for a global game jam here in San Francisco. Yay, global game jam. But one of my questions is like, I think that, well, okay, beginning is an opinion. The next part is the question related to the opinion. One of my opinions is that like, if more people get to make games, we get to get more of these different perspectives and different cultures. And whenever I run game jams, like it's more or less the same people who kind of come all the time. And I would like to have more different kinds of people aside from the usuals. Like, yeah, the usuals are great. You know, they can support the new people and stuff. I'm not really sure how to make these kinds of things more accessible and available, because a lot of the ways that we advertise these things, it's all on the internet, but a lot of people don't have internet or don't have good internet connection or don't even have computers or access. And especially if we're talking about like protecting local cultures and heritage, there's lots of peoples, like for example, in the remote regions of the Philippines or something like that. How can we make stuff like these more accessible so they can make games and they can collaborate with us and do all these cool things? Thank you, that's all.
Thank you.
I think it was a very global game jam type of question.
No, I'm happy to. Well, I can give you an example, and I think to your question, a lot of times what we have to do is we have to be the ones to reach out and make that happen and help facilitate that interaction. So one really good example I can give you is I participated a few years ago in the Sami Game Jam up in northern Finland. So we were up there in Utsjoki above the Arctic Circle, where the indigenous Sami people live, which they're across the whole region: Finland, Sweden, in Norway. And what we did is there was teams of game developers who went up there, and we spent a lot of time interacting with people from the community and listening to their stories and talking with them. And we also did traditional gatherings that they showed us, like outside, and it was -40, so it was it was cold. But it was an amazing experience. So basically, a lot of listening, tons of listening, facilitating that communication between the game developers and the community. And then the game jam actually was about taking their stories and basically putting that into game form, basically, but with the community kind of looking over their shoulder. There were some people in the community who had the development skills, so they participated as well. But it was really a way to try and both be there as an educational forum for game development, but also see how can the game developers be good listeners and see if they're going to make games about other cultures, then how do they do it right? And then a lot of that comes down to like exactly what they did, where you're interacting with that culture and communicating with them. Just like I worked on the game Never Alone, and that game was really about, and that entire game, everything in that game, every piece of content was approved by the Inuit people. As they were basically doing the creative direction. The game development team was basically facilitating just the technical part of it. And to me, it's like that when we want to do things like highlighting cultural heritage, that's really, to me, the way you do it. But to get more people in those communities developing, or that's a whole nother educational outreach piece, which I know in Global Game Jam, that's part of why we exist, to try and make that happen. But you're right, there's a huge socioeconomic disparity in terms of internet access, hardware access, all these other things. It's a bigger problem. It's sometimes harder to achieve. So But yeah, so a lot of times there's sometimes where you actually people bring the equipment to the community and have a longer term commitment to doing education there. But yeah, it's unfortunately that's not the norm yet. But I've seen good examples of it so far. So yes.
Hi. What are your thoughts about the current state of localization tools for different languages and how they could be improved?
All right. What's the state of localization tools?
Well, my thought comes from the fact that I was looking at a lot of these games and noticing a lot of them are in English. And I am wondering, I would imagine that at least some of the languages aren't supported in Unicode, at least not to a sufficient extent. I don't know if that's a problem you ran into personally, but in terms of trying to localize games into, the parent culture's language,
Yeah.
what are the difficulties?
We're going to run into that problem ourselves because we want to localize this for in the Quechua language, which is a language that is spoken in the Andes of Peru. And I don't think we know how to do that in a good way yet, but I think what we'll have to do is just find someone who can do it for us, who is not an official localizer, but so someone who can speak Quechua well and stuff. And that's very inconvenient if you would like to do that in a large scale, like for a whole industry.
Right.
So how the state is in development, I guess. Localizing is need to be evolved. And maybe it's hard to find incentive for that always. And that's why it is like this now. But when it comes to these sort of things, it's very important that we do it either way.
Yeah, and I think we will actually get help from the organizations that we're working on. So maybe if you want to use some smaller language, you should reach out to some smaller organizations that are actually working with that. I think that's a good idea.
Thank you.
There's also an opportunity that dawns on me about, there's a lot of groups out there and governments who support them to document and preserve kind of dying languages and less well-known languages. So there's maybe an opportunity for games like that to kind of merge the two initiatives, and you'll be reaching goals, each other's goals by not only kind of documenting and preserving the language itself, just as a standalone project, but also incorporating those languages into your games as a way to preserve and also celebrate those less well-known languages. So there's definitely an opportunity there.
Yeah, I might add as well that it was very hard for us because we wanted to use. It would have been great if we could have used some language like the local language in the game already, but since none of us are descendants of the Chachapoyas, not even me. We decided that, for example, with the audio, the audio, the music is inspired by local medicinal music, but we decided immediately that we wouldn't try to represent any voices in the music, as chanting often comes with this type of music. And if anyone of us would try to do chanting from a culture that is not ours, that would be problematic. So in that way, we felt a little bit limited, and we had to find a way to go around that while still drawing inspiration from the culture that we were representing.
Hey.
Hi, wonderful games to you guys. I was just wondering what the research process looked like for making this game and what kind of sources that you relied on, or maybe what kind of sources were out there that you could find. Thank you.
Well, the research is an archaeological and historical research, and I think this is a very interesting question because many times when you hear about, okay, let's do a historical game or a cultural heritage game, sounds like sometimes, okay, it has to be a game, so it has to be fun, but also you have to fill the other person with information, no? So there's a big challenge of the balance between how you deal with the information, the person that is playing is really going to take, and how he's going to take it. Like, for example, if I put all of the names of the plants, probably no one is going to remember them, no? Even more so for a game like this, no? So in those terms, we really thought that we really had to make all the investigation and that research in order to put these elements in the game, just to give you a glimpse and a feeling that you were really seeing something that is different. Not only because you have an artist that does a different art style, but also because it truly comes from a different reference. The jungle of India is not the same as the one from Peru and the one from Brazil, and et cetera, no? So this is a very big element in the concept and art department. And this is related to another idea that it's really strong for us, and in the game, of course, that it's trying to think about how do you deliver a message to a player? Because we come here and we explain the project, no? But how does a game that it's dealing with cultural heritage giving you a message that is not a moral message, for example? Let's say, okay, it's bad for you to steal pieces. It's really easy for anyone to make a game that gives you these limitations. But the hard thing is, how do you make the person like feel a true connection to this idea? So we aimed for the artistical one, and for us, the game it's about a person that is actually trying to save the pieces at the beginning of the exploration in the map, and then he wants to take them. The investigation told us the Purunmachus are in the mountains, so that's a fact. But in the sense of the message, and more in a metaphorical way even, that I think it's always interesting to have as an extra layer in games. What you're doing is the process of stealing and then realizing that you have done wrong. So going up to the mountain is in a way the element of investigation, but also a metaphorical sense of you have done wrong. You have to, you have to do retribution. No one is telling you. You're just doing this as an act. So I think investigation comes, the true balance of investigation, because you can die in a pool of information, is what you choose in order to make a true meaning. And how can that meaning be a metaphor that accompanies the mechanics, the narrative, that are more like the structural, more direct part that many players are used to feel and know. So we think that that element sometimes flips like a postman's card from under your door, and we think that that really helps to make that extra element of, maybe you didn't learn a lot about Chachapoya's culture, but you get a feeling of, oh, this is important. And that's the first piece of sand that really we think let the games change.
Hi. So I was wondering if there were any people that you talked to in your research that gave you information that made you decide you needed to change something fundamental about your game. I noticed you talking about the archaeologist who was expressing frustration with the fact that people were just going out and damaging these sites who didn't know what they were doing. I really appreciated the change from take to steal because it's something people don't think about, especially in how these collection of artifacts is represented in most games. So I was just wondering if there was something that came up in your research, be it with archaeologists or locals who were familiar with the culture, that made you decide to change a fundamental direction of some aspect of your game.
No, we didn't. It didn't happen that. But when we talked with the archaeologist, she was really worried about making a game that, in one moment, the player is stealing. But the challenge is you have to give that free. For us, it was you have to give that freedom to the player in order to realize the damage that means. No. Also, many people that have the information you need for a game, they don't know about video games and the power that they have. So it's a really delicate balance, and depending on the context you are, that gets stronger. So in Peru, many people sadly see video games still as something of only that are only entertainment. No, so, but no, we didn't got of those challenges.
Hi, this has been really great. I was wondering if there was any suggestions or ways for people to get involved with making more games like this happen, and like more just like or organizations that I can contribute to directly or indirectly to make this happen more, I guess.
Yeah, I guess what was the question? How to engage in making this type of games? Like what context or?
That way, or also just existing organizations that I could, help to, so that we could get more developers out there who can tell their unique stories of their cultures or that kind of things. Even if I personally can't facilitate that.
I guess Games for Change would be a nice forum for that. You can also come to Sweden and study my program, Serious Games Development at Skövde University.
In the context of Peru, there are no organizations, but that's also interesting, because what happens if you have that interest and that you don't find them? Someone has to take charge of it. Maybe you're not going to be the best. Maybe you're not going to be Games for a Change, but you're going to learn in the process. That's one of the richness of those empty spaces, that someone can take that crown and fight for it. No, so that's what we're trying to do.
Maybe it's you.
It's you. Yeah. You're the chosen one.
Yeah, we certainly hoped that one outcome of the Game Jam was to inspire others to do similar cultural heritage game jams, other organizers, whether it be, on the local country level or regional level. We, the US government, certainly could not have done this alone. Like, it certainly took working with a trusted partner like the Global Game Jam in order to make it happen. So there's definitely room for more kind of public-private partnerships and collaboration, or motivated people in the dev community who like to organize these jams to go out, go forth and have your own cultural heritage game jams, in the future. So.
And just one thing I would add to that is that I think, based on the comments, building on those comments, is that, all it was really was just picking the theme, because like every Global Game Jam has a theme, and every jam that we do, whether it's a partner event or the January event, it has a theme. And most jams that I know of today, they do this similar now, whether it's at a school or a company or whatever. And so all it really has to start with is having the will to say, you know what, this jam is going to be about representing our cultural heritage. So that's what the theme is going to be this year or this month or whatever it is, because I know some organizations, especially schools, tend to jam like a lot. But all around the world, that's one of the things I'm hoping, and I think it's probably logical that it would start at universities, is that, hey, make a jam, make a game about your cultural heritage, either your personal heritage or generally of the region that you're in. And I think that's really all it takes to kind of get that moving in that direction. And we just haven't seen that happen very much, because a lot of jams just kind of pick, sort of like the Global Game Jam, we pick a generic theme, but we do that because it's our jam is across so many cultures. So, and I think with that, we're done. So, yeah, thank you. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you.